Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. The national budget deficit widens to 1.12 trillion pesos as of end September. A U.S. infrastructure giant vows to keep investing in the Philippines despite the ongoing flood control scandal. And Russian President Vladimir Putin says he's open to meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. First, let's take a look at how global financial markets performed overnight. Wall Street advanced as investors weighed a mixed bag of corporate earnings against shifting geopolitical developments. The third quarter reporting season is now in full swing. Tesla shares rebounded up 2.3% despite posting a third quarter profit miss. The electric vehicle maker is the first of the so-called Magnificent Seven mega-cap stocks to report, a group that together makes up more than a third of the S&P 500's market value. IBM, meanwhile, slipped 0.9% after reporting a slowdown in its key cloud software segment, even as it topped earnings estimates. The White House confirmed that U.S. President Donald Trump will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping next week during his Asia tour. Now, trade tensions between Washington and Beijing have escalated in recent days, but news of the leaders' upcoming meeting helped calm some of those concerns.
We continue all this year to have this disconnect in the U.S. economy in particular between sentiment and actual results. We just don't feel good about what's going on out there. And it got kicked off in the business sector with the tariffs being announced. But in fact, they've been trickled out and absorbed little by little.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.3%, the S&P 500 up by 0.6%, and the Nasdaq up by 0.9%. Over in Europe, markets closed higher as well. The UK's FTSE up by 0.7%, Germany's DAX up by 0.2%, and France's CAC 40 up by 0.2% as well. Here at home, the government spending gap is widening, a sign of continued fiscal pressure as the Philippines struggles to balance growth with higher borrowing costs. The national budget deficit reached 1.12 trillion pesos as of end September. Latest data from the Bureau of Treasury shows the shortfall grew 15.15% from 970.2 billion pesos in the same period last year. Despite the wider gap, it remained 11.04% below the government's deficit target of 1.26 trillion pesos for the 9-month period. Revenues reached 3.37 trillion pesos, up from 3.29 trillion a year ago, but still below the 3.39 trillion target. Expenditures rose 5.18% to 4.48 trillion pesos from 4.26 trillion last year, also short of the government's 4.64 trillion peso spending goal. The wider deficit underscores the challenge for economic managers, keeping infrastructure spending on track while maintaining fiscal discipline amid slower revenue growth and higher interest rates. Now, global investors are turning cautious as new forecasts point to slower growth ahead for the Philippines. Economic expansion next year is expected to fall well below the Marcos administration's target. BMI Country Risk and Industry Research, a unit of Fitch Group, has cut its 2026 growth forecast for the Philippines to 5.2%, down from 6.2% previously, warning that risks remain skewed to the downside. If realized growth next year would miss the government's 6 to 7% target range. The downgrade comes as the Philippines faces mounting headwinds, from U.S. protectionist measures to a widening corruption probe that could extend beyond flood control projects. The outlook underscores the challenge for policymakers to restore investor confidence and sustain momentum amid global uncertainty. But despite the more cautious global outlook, some foreign investors remain confident in the Philippines' long-term potential. Foreign confidence in the country remains steady, with global infrastructure giant I-Squared Capital reaffirming its long-term bet on the country. The firm vows to keep investing in Philippine infrastructure, signaling trust in the government's economic reforms. During a meeting with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in Malacanang, the firm's founder and chairman, Dr. Sadek Waba, praised the administration's reforms for strengthening the investment climate. He said that the Philippines remains a prime destination for long-term infrastructure growth. I-Squared Capital is among the country's biggest foreign investors, with over $2 billion committed across energy, transport, and water projects. Philippine auto sales cooled in September, but the electric vehicle market continues to gain traction. Our mobility correspondent G. Baroga reports on what's driving and what's slowing down the industry's performance.
Philippine car sales hit the brakes in September, but electrified vehicles are seeing continued momentum. Latest data from the Chamber of Automotive Manufacturers and the Truck Manufacturers Association show the industry sold over 38,000 units compared to more than 39,000 in the same month last year. This is a 4% decline year-on-year. Commercial vehicles remain as the growth driver, although it only posted a 3% increase in sales last month, 30,081 compared to last year's 29,104. Passenger car sales continue to fall, this time by 24%, selling nearly 8,000 units compared to over 10,000 last year. Meanwhile, sales of electrified vehicles are charging ahead. In September, hybrids had 1,750 units sold, battery electrics had 379, and plug-in hybrids have 94. These numbers exclude sales of BYD under AC Mobility of the Bilyonaryo de Ayala family, which is currently the market leader in electric vehicles. For Campi members, Toyota of the Bilyonaryo T family leads the hybrids, Tesla of billionaire Elon Musk for battery electric, and Omoda and Jayco for plug-in hybrids. In a statement, Campi President Romel Gutierrez expressed optimism for electrified vehicles and the auto industry as a whole. Toyota still rules the road with a 48% market share. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
The flood control scandal is widening as another lawmaker is now under the spotlight. Benguet Lone District Representative Eric Yap has been tagged as a person of interest for his alleged link to a construction firm implicated in the controversy. Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon has filed criminal complaints for malversation of public funds through falsification of public documents against DPWH officials and Silver Wolves Construction Corporation, as well as St. Timothy Corporation, over separate flood control projects in La Union. Justice Secretary Jesus Crispin Remulla said Yap is known to be the beneficial owner of one of the firms. Dizon, however, clarified that the beneficial owners are not included in the complaints at this stage. Remulla added that the person of interest tag will prompt the Anti-Money Laundering Council to conduct its own investigation. Yap was earlier implicated after a former security consultant of resigned lawmaker Zaldico claimed that Yap brought 46 suitcases filled with cash to Cos residents in Pasig City. Yap has repeatedly denied any involvement in alleged kickbacks from government infrastructure projects. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back. Let's check on how Asian markets are doing this Friday morning. Right now, the Nikkei 225 is in the green, sharply up by 1.3%. The Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index up by 0.7%. Shanghai's Composite up by 0.5%, and Singapore's Straits Times Index up as well, up by 0.3%. Here at home, Philippine stocks snapped out of a two-day slide on Thursday as late-day bargain hunting lifted the market back above the 6,000 level. The PSE Index rose 0.4% to close at 60.54, while the All Shares Index added 0.3% to 36.38. Trading remained thin at just 4.8 billion pesos in value as investors picked up select shares following recent declines. Analysts say sentiment is still guarded, with traders looking for cues from upcoming corporate earnings and the next policy signals from the central bank. The market is expected to move sideways over the near term, with investors remaining cautious until there's a clear catalyst for growth. Taking a look at the PSE index right now, as of 10:11 this morning, main gauge is trading to the upside in step with other markets in the Asian region. The main gauge is higher by 0.2% to 60.65. The broader all shares index up as well, up by 0.1% to 36.42. Taking a look at these sub indices, all are trading to the upside except for the property and services counters, not down by much though. Trading volume is thin at 371 million shares, valued at just at 19 billion rather. So value is high right there. We're gonna try to uncover why in the next newscasts. Meantime, a market breadth is bullish with 67 advancers, 45 decliners, and 38 stocks unchanged. Taking a look at the currencies, the peso opened at 58.55 against the dollar, up from its previous close of 58.61. The government is turning to mining to jumpstart new revenue and investment as the Department of Environment and Natural Resources prepares to auction off about 50 idle mining assets nationwide, starting this year. The move is part of efforts to revive the country's mining industry and boost mineral resource development. Environment Undersecretary Carlos Primo David said that the agency is finalizing competitive bidding guidelines set for release in November. The dormant assets include expired and canceled mining permits and untenured mineralized areas. Only eligible companies with proven technical and financial capacity will be allowed to bid. David says that the new system replaces the old first come, first served approach to promote transparency and maximize benefits for the government and local communities. In the wake of public outrage over alleged ghost flood control projects, a leading voice from the business community is urging authorities to ensure fairness and due process. Makati Business Club Executive Director Apa Ongpin is calling on investigators to keep the probe fact-based and free from politics. A call now being echoed by Bicol Saro Party List Representative Terry Ridon, the co-chair of the House Infrastructure Committee. He joins us right now. Representative Ridon, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Maiki.
Okay, let's talk about fairness and due process. The Makati Business Club is calling for, due process and that the investigations stay fact-based. A call that everybody is echoing, really. But how realistic is all of this to keep it fact-based and free from politics, especially as we're pretty much in 2026 and 2028 is just around the corner.
Well, I think irrespective of 2028, everyone who has been named, everyone who is involved in the flood control, corruption controversy should be able to say their piece and should be able to withstand the scrutiny of all investigative bodies and whatever cases that will be filed against them.
Mm-hmm. With the ICI now leading the probe, where does Congress fit in?
Well, of course, Congress will still be able to submit documents to the ICI and to the Ombudsman and to all the other law enforcement agencies if we receive new information relating to flood control issues and new cases. And not just on flood control, but also all other infrastructure controversies that we may see in the next couple of weeks and months.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of new cases, Benguet Representative Yap is now being tagged as a person of interest in the flood control scandal. So it's widening. What does this tell you about the scale of the problem, and do you expect more names to surface?
Well, we're expecting more names, but I think what we are seeing with the new disclosure of Congressman Yap is that the flood control corruption, infrastructure corruption did not start just within this administration. It goes back to the past, which is why the ICI is perfectly correct to basically go back to 2015 or 10 years from today.
Yeah, it started much longer, and we will just see how deep it's gone. On another front, how should Congress handle situations like this when one of its own is implicated?
Well, we have to let the evidence show itself. No? So if our colleagues are implicated, then they will have to confront it on their own. Congress will not stand in the way to defend our colleagues.
Okay. This probe started with the Senate's Blue Ribbon Committee and with the House's Infrastructure Committee, which you co-chair, with two main hearings and two initial hearings before going to the ICI. In your view, Representative Ridon, what was the biggest bottleneck to really moving things forward? Was it a lack of evidence? What is that bottleneck?
Well, I think the most important concern at this point is really to be able to build airtight cases. And that has been the pronouncement of the president himself. He doesn't want to file cases just to file the cases, but to make sure that someone actually gets convicted for all of these scams and corruption that had been undertaken in the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's right. Airtight cases. We want it fast, but we want it airtight also. You're a lawyer, Congressman Ridon. Can you give us a sense of how difficult is it going to be to complete all the documentation, get all the witnesses together? How long could it possibly take before things are filed and before we perhaps even reach the conviction level?
Well, I think to be very clear, the low-lying fruit in all of these things would be the ghost projects. And the ICI, Ombudsman, and DPWH have been very focused on basically filing the cases on ghost projects because the evidence for these aren't that difficult. The only question is whether or not the infrastructure exists. If it doesn't exist, then it's a ghost project. And then they would have to follow the money trail if money has actually been disbursed and received by particular personalities.
Mm-hmm. You know, the lowest hanging fruit is always, it's the contractors, it's the district engineers. How confident are you that this will go all the way up to the masterminds themselves, perhaps even some lawmakers?
Well, to be perfectly clear, there are many masterminds, not just one mastermind. There will be legislators, there'll be congressmen, senators, and even executive officials here. But I think if they made the mistake, for example, of going through the banking system, the financial system, and AMLC had been able to find that entire paper trail, which I think they had seen in Congressman Yap's money trail within the banking system. I think that is how legislators might actually be linked.
Mm-hmm. At this point, how would you describe how progress has been thus far?
Well, the ICI had made pronouncements that they wanted to live stream the proceedings, which is a very important transparency measure. But just yesterday, I think they slowed a little bit because they said that they have to do the procedures first on how to do the live streaming. So I think it's a bit of a step back, but at least the commitment to live stream is already there.
Are you in favor of that commitment to live stream?
Of course, because it's a transparency measure, like what they stated, because everyone is basically wanted to participate. No?
Yeah.
Even the public would want to get to the bottom of the entire flood control controversy.
Yeah, there's so much public clamor for this. Let's talk about the regional impact. As Bicol Saro representative, how have controversies like this affected regional flood control works in Bicol and in other provinces? Are legitimate projects being delayed or suspended, perhaps, because of the ongoing investigations?
Well, the new pronouncement of the president for the next year's budget is that there would be no flood control projects for next year. So that has a real impact in areas in which you have real climate issues, particularly flooding issues.
Yeah.
So I think that would have to wait for 2027. So that is one of the unfortunate consequences of the entire controversy that we are facing today.
Yeah, they need to make sure that we avoid the mistakes of the past. Another thing I wanted to ask: how can Congress ensure that the ICI's findings translate to concrete legislative and administrative action, and not just another cycle of investigations and amnesia?
Well, there are companion legislation in the Senate and at the House, in which we would want to institutionalize and give more powers to the ICI, particularly subpoena and contempt powers, similar to what we have in Congress and at the Senate. I think it's a very important measure to basically compel cooperation with all involved personalities. So hopefully, as soon as the independent commission bill gets passed into law, the ICI will soon have more powers for them to be able to do their investigative work.
The business community sees this, this flood control scandal as a true test of governance. The PSE index has lost about under 100 billion pesos in market cap over the past couple of weeks. BMI, a unit of Fitch Solutions, for several reasons, has cut the 2026 growth forecast for the Philippines from 6.2% to a lot, to 5.2%. In your view, how has all of this affected confidence in the country, and how can our government show that it's serious about cleaning the system up?
Well, firstly, we have to acknowledge that there are really weak fundamentals at the moment, but it is aggravated by the governance risk that we had seen with the current scandal. So I think the way forward for government to assuage the business community and the investing community is to really make sure that people are actually made accountable for the entire flood control corruption that we have been seeing.
That's it. That's what everyone's looking for, accountability. Thank you very much, Bicol Saro Party List Representative Terry Ridon.
Thank you.
Now, global markets are watching closely as Russian President Vladimir Putin says he has agreed to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump in Budapest. The announcement comes amid tightening sanctions and rising tensions that could impact global energy and trade flows. Putin said Moscow has always supported and continues to support dialogue with Washington. But Trump earlier claimed he had canceled the summit after the U.S. Treasury imposed sanctions on two of Russia's biggest oil companies over Putin's refusal to end the invasion of Ukraine.
The UDAS president has decided to cancel or postpone this meeting. More likely, he is talking about postponing it. What can we say? Dialogue is always better than any confrontation, any disputes, or especially war. That is why we have always supported continued dialogue, and we continue to support it.
And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo news channel, and have a good weekend.